Joining us this evening. Trying a few different things with the opening to give folks time to get in and know that we're on. I appreciate everybody that's in the chat room so far. Um, so tonight, my guest is a very good friend of mine and an AFA leader that gets far too little spotlight for the significance of his impact. We got Witan Clifford Erickson with us. Welcome, Cliff.
Hey, thank you for having me, Alsherjargothi Matt, and hello everyone watching.
Well, going through what folks we needed to immediately get on here with me, you're right there at the top of the list. You've really had such a significant role, certainly in my time as Alsherjargothi. I don't know. Do you want to give folks a little bit of background on how you got involved in the AFA and kind of what you've done, at least since I've taken things over?
Yeah, absolutely. That can either be a long story or a short story. I'll go with a middling story. But I think, like a lot of us, I was raised Christian and fell away from that. I spent some time as an atheist where, the world revolved around me and I thought I knew everything. Those things turned out not to be true. And as I was trying to find something more meaningful, I was fortunate enough, after searching around, to find the Asatru Folk Assembly. I was skeptical at first, not in the community aspect of it, but more in, did I believe in the supernatural? I still had a lot of that Christian baggage and atheist baggage, honestly. If you couldn't prove something in a laboratory, or at least by writing a really wordy theoretical paper about it, then it must not be true, right? And of course, that's not the way the world is. And I was fortunate enough to have met the folk builder Patricia, who was the folk builder for the AFA in Pennsylvania at the time. And she was kind enough to allow me to hang around long enough to become comfortable with the idea of religion again, and with the idea that I'm part of something bigger than myself and that I'm part of something really important. I hung around the AFA for probably about a year before I actually joined the AFA, which is something that I'm really grateful I was allowed to do. After I joined, I was a regular member for a few years. I remember coming to all kinds of different events, and I was the nerd with the backpack and the notebook, going to all the different lectures and trying to learn as much as I could. And fast forward a few years, I was asked to be a folk builder by Patricia again. And at first I said no. I didn't really like having to follow instructions, or I wasn't ready to be part of a team, I guess. I was out there, hosting some meetups and trying to promote our religion. But I was still doing it the Cliff way, just the Cliff way, because I was coming from a history of having known everything in the world, and that's something that's tough to get over. Anyway, I eventually realized that being part of a team of people that have got your back and that have the same fundamental ethics as you and that are never going to quit, no matter how many victories you have and no matter how many defeats you have, because it's a long, long fight that we're in. It's a long game that we're in, however you want to phrase that. So I became a folk builder, which just made everything that I'd been trying to do a lot easier. Suddenly I had the resources of the Asatru Folk Assembly behind me, and I was able to get word out about things that I was hosting to a much wider audience, and, things picked up from there. And I've, been involved in the AFA ever since. It's how I met my wife. It's the reason I have a family. I'm definitely a lifer, and I'm really proud to be able to help bring new people in and to help make this something that lasts forever. And hopefully the rain's not too loud. Of course, it is raining here with my my garage roof over me.
Well, real quick, we got a couple of questions coming up on the side. First, people are commenting they enjoy your beard, Cliff.
Oh, thank you. Me too.
So Ruben asks, wait, was that the Warrior OST? I'm not sure what the OST is. I know that theme music was a tune called Legionnaire. Alistair asks, is there any plans to update the website? We have the perfect guest to answer that question for you. Cliff, take it away.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're constantly updating the website, and we have websites for the Hoffs. If you mean a total redesign just because, then no. It does its job right now, and we're always open to suggestions. Feel free to email us if there's certain things you'd like to see. But it gets our message out, and stability is really important, and continuity is really important. But we're open to ideas, but not just for the fun of it.
All right. Well, so also a Cliff question. Cliff, are you from PA?
Yes, I am. Born and raised.
He has transversed the state now, though.
It's true. Yeah, I was in southeast Pennsylvania. Now I'm way up in northwest Pennsylvania by Lake Erie.
So you told folks a little bit about how you got involved in the AFA, and even from those early backpack nerd days or whatever, Pat always had her eye on you and said you were going to do big things, and she was spooky that way, but she was absolutely correct.
Yeah, Patricia was really influential in, I think, the way that I developed as an Asatru, and in keeping the pressure on for me to get involved in the AFA in a larger capacity than I was willing to at the time. I'm glad she saw some potential in me to do those kind of things. She's one of the reasons that I started to develop a more spiritual approach to Asatru. It may sound strange because it's a religion, so why would I have to develop a spiritual approach to it? But I'm a lot more comfortable in, not that I'm good at these things, but where I get excited and what I'm comfortable with is, history and archaeology, genealogy and ancestry, which are close to being the same thing, but not always exactly. Linguistics, things of that nature, studying all the stuff you can find in a book, but that isn't actually Asatru. It's all the stuff that can support our knowledge about Asatru. It informs what we do. It's really important. It's part of our history and our culture. But it's not actually worshiping the gods. It's not the gift exchange that we always talk about. It's not developing a relationship with my own ancestors that have passed on. So Patricia got me, and others, but Patricia was closest to me, so I had the most experience with her. And as far as why Asatru matters, not just to me, but why me being an Asatru matters to my deceased ancestors now, not just when they were alive. Why it matters to our descendants that are going to follow us in the next and the 100th generation from now, and how our folk as a whole, and each one of us individually, are proof of the gods in and of itself, that we as a noble people and as a people that can understand, in the limited way that we as humans can understand the gods, are confirmation that they exist. And that's the sort of stuff that you can't write a thesis about and prove that sort of circular thinking is real. But she made a big impression on me.
Well, I'm glad. And I'm glad you brought that up. So many people, when they're just getting involved in this, don't get it. And it's even hard to explain on here, but until you experience something spiritual, it's very easy to think that preliminary study, if you will, is the be all end all until you've gone to that next level. And so it's really hard if nobody's taken a shot to participate for them to get that feeling, or to really understand the meat and taters of what we're saying here. But I encourage everybody who's listening to this to go out and don't just learn about it. Absolutely learn about it. But once you've done some of that, go out and be part of it and experience it. And you'll see the difference, because it's really profound. Another thing that a lot of people don't understand is there was a whole lot of work to be done when I first became Alsherjargothi back in 2016. And, I needed a whole bunch of people to help me. There was enormous shoes to fill and a lot of important stuff for us to do. And, select handful of people, but you were in that handful. So much behind the scenes on how we constructed our messaging, on the update that we did to the Declaration of Purpose and the Statement of Ethics. You were very significantly involved in that. Certainly the Statement of Ethics. Tell folks a little bit about that, if you would.
Sure. I remember when our founder Stephen McNallen announced that he was going to be retiring and turning the responsibility, the role, the title of Alsherjargothi over to you, Matt. And I don't think I was alone. It was scary. There had never been modern Asatru or an Asatru Folk Assembly without Stephen McNallen at the helm. And we really didn't know what we were going to do. There was a moment of panic, I think. Okay, Steve's retiring. What are we going to do? And, we knew we weren't going to quit, but we really had no idea if we were going to see, a whole bunch of people leave because, when Ozzy quit Black Sabbath, it wasn't the same, right? So we weren't sure. And so we did our best. And I think we did a pretty good job looking back on it now, but it wasn't a sure thing at the time. We did our best to make sure that, like I was referring to with the website, that there was continuity and stability. And at the same time, we were able to take the opportunity to bring new blood and to bring some new people into prominent roles and to guiding the AFA where we knew that it could go from the foundation that Stephen and others around him, Sheila especially, had built. And you asked me to revamp the Statement of Ethics because we had, as folk builders, and of course you were a Gothi at this point as well, but when I met you, I think you were still just a folk builder. It's an important thing, but you hadn't been ordained yet. And we had various experiences where, we had people that were confused about what the Asatru Folk Assembly stood for and about what Asatru was even, what about what our folk meant. And, there were various phrases that were used that we decided to get rid of, Northern European people or Northern European descended people, I think was a very, very prominent in the original language that we were revamping. And, we made the decision to just say white because that's what we meant. And, that was almost scary in and of itself because you say that word and you get accused of being things, and people don't know what they're talking about, of course, because they've never met us or attempted to understand our religion or anything like that. But we had people that were confused, about what we were doing and what our intentions were and who our gods were. And so it was really important for us to, I guess, just simplify the language, really. If you can take a 3-word phrase and turn it into a single word, then you're being more direct. And that's what we tried to do.
Well, so I think this is a good time to mention this. A lot of the time folks wonder, why we use the word white. And they almost take, white as fighting words. If you say white, you must be, adversarial to someone. and this may be of interest to our international audience. I've seen a couple people in the chat room that aren't in the United States. Certainly here in the United States, we're all very, very used to filling out surveys or applications or, questionnaires, and they always ask your race on there, and there's various other descriptors, but we all know what white means. And people were genuinely confused at the time about Northern European heritage. If they were one small fragment of some Northern European heritage, but predominantly something else, they would never click white on their job application or on, a medical form. We all know what that means, and it has a value. So that's the only reason we used it, is to be absolutely clear. It's never been something we've wanted to do to trick anybody or to, play those games to sound nice and have people here under false pretenses or spending their energy with us if we weren't really the right fit for them or really a place they wanted to be putting in their energy. So it was more about being honest and being clear and upfront. We've got a couple of questions I noticed over in the side. If you guys want to make sure your questions get asked, a really good thing to use is Entropy. If we could throw up the Entropy link, that would be awesome to see you guys there. Also, Entropy to throw us a little bit of money if you'd like to for donations. We've got a number of projects coming up. I think some of those Cliff and I'll talk about here in a little bit. But over on Entropy, you can do that or do a super chat and throw some money at us to get questions answered. I promise I will answer your questions regardless, but donations are always appreciated. Ruben asks, what is the biggest change inside the AFA, if any, you two perceive from your original days compared to now? And do you see some kind of evolution or improvement? I'm going to go ahead and talk because I get to, and then Cliff gets the leftovers, which is unfortunate. I think a lot of these things Cliff and I would both see, but I think some of them may be more personal than others. Certainly, what I have seen overall is a very significant movement away from a kind of I don't want to diminish it, but early on there was very much a group campout feel, a membership charitable organization feel. And the AFA is really involved as a religious body, as a church in our time. I've also really enjoyed seeing the increase in women and in families. Cliff and I have both benefited from that. We both met our wives and built a family within the AFA. When we were first coming around, it was a whole lot of guys and not a lot of ladies, certainly not a lot of kids. And now if you look at any of our group pictures, it's full of ladies and kids. I can't think of the last time we've had a picture that didn't either have a baby in arms or, a pregnant lady prominently in the picture. So the families, that's been huge. I think overall, there's just a big increase in maturity and piety, I'd say, within the AFA. What do you think, Cliff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the demographics of our membership are a lot healthier and more balanced. There were a few times at winter nights that, I jotted down. This is when I was really excited about it because it had just changed, and I still am, but it was new. And, we had a good breakdown of married couples and men and women and children. Whereas when I first was coming around to things in, like 10 or 12 years ago, it was almost all guys. We've matured a lot, as you mentioned. There used to be a lot more drinking. There used to be a lot more kind of LARPy kind of stuff. There would be people wearing furs or weird hats. That was part of this, fringe religion at the time. We hadn't grown up yet. And I think that was a stage that was necessary in order to set it apart from, from Christianity. It had to have a little bit of an edginess to it in order to initially get any traction at all. And yeah, I'm glad to see we still like to drink, but it's done in a responsible way, more like a dinner party kind of drinking as opposed to, the frat house kind of drinking. There was there was some peer pressure drinking when I first came around. And I think we've done a pretty good job of discouraging that. And that's not something the leadership ever wanted to have, but the maturity of our members has increased. And, of course, we'll still occasionally get some goofball that comes around and drinks too much, just like you will whenever you get a group of people together. But it's a lot healthier that way. The fact that the Asatru Folk Assembly has halls that give back to their communities is huge too. When I first came around, the AFA could help its members to a bit, but really was focused inward, and it needed to be, because we needed to develop the religion of Asatru into something that's meaningful for modern Americans and modern Europeans and modern Australians, anywhere our folk are in Midgard. It needed to be something that was applicable to somebody in practical terms in the 21st century. And the Viking LARP stuff is not. A lot of that stuff may be cool in a certain context, but it's not if you are trying to address the needs, of a father of 4 who just lost his job, or of a single mother who's, struggling to keep her sanity because she, gets 2 hours to herself every day. And that's counting sleep. That's the sleep. So it is it's a lot more practical now. When I first came around, it was for me, it was something that I did outside of my normal daily life. A big Asatru event would come up and I would go to it. And as far as my friends and family knew at the time, oh, there goes Cliff on one of his secret camping trips. Because I didn't tell them what I was doing at first. It was just like, well, I'm going camping for the weekend, bye. And that must have seemed really strange because they didn't know who I was going with or where I was going. And yeah, it's just really grown up. And I'm glad that each generation that's been involved went through the different phases of things that they needed to, because we're able to enjoy the benefits of that here now.
Well, everybody listening, I want you guys to take away from this broadcast that the AFA has evolved hugely in the past several years, and Cliff has been right there through all of it, helping me. He's absolutely one of the guys I lean on, and one of the guys that's contributed so much to the success that we're seeing in the AFA lately. Brandy's got a question. Witan Erickson, you've been the driving force for the runestone. How has that evolved?
Well, I took over. You mean the website or the newsletter, or both? I guess we're not sure. So for a while, I was in the driver's seat on both of those things. I took them both over basically just by volunteering to do things for the Asatru Folk Assembly when I was an apprentice folk builder. And I guess I got things done in a timely manner and well, because the stack got higher and higher. And the newsletter was something that I inherited. So the changes that have happened to it most recently are the mark of our folk builder Jessica in Ohio. I couldn't even tell you the changes that happened to it from when it was the voice to when it became the runestone, because there were little things issue by issue that would have changed. I tried to reshuffle it so that we put, more religious oriented articles at the top, so that, for those who aren't familiar with it, our newsletter had, at least now, it starts off with a column by Alsherjargothi Matt, and then it'll have articles from our Witan and our Gothar, and then it will have standing things like event announcements and our calendar and so on. And then it goes into the monthly updates from each state and each Hof district and so on. It used to kind of just be jumbled. As far as the website, man, the Wayback Machine will tell you a fun story. If you're not sure what the Wayback Machine is, just Google it. But I took over the website when it was something somebody else had created, and then lucky for me, it crashed on my watch, not by my doing, but I had to put up a temporary page. Got to play with putting Fractor up on the main page, and then finding out that that's not a good idea. And it's gone through a few different versions. Most of them, were incremental changes that were done for the sake of practicality. Either something we had been using broke and I had to find a way to fix it, or we got feedback from our members or a clever idea from Matt or me or one of our leaders, and we implemented it. And there's a whole stack of ideas that we never implemented as well.
So Cliff, we got another question for you. Human Manipulation Nation wants to know, we always get the same question, what books do you recommend? But how about you, Cliff? Asatru related or not, for that matter? Also, any favorite media, films, and YouTube channels, etc.?
So I'm a father of two. I got a full-time job, so a lot of my own media consumption is, preschool oriented. But as far as books relating or related to Asatru, I have a list that I recommend to anyone who's new to Asatru. And what I recommend is that the first thing that someone who doesn't know the stories of our gods to a level where they think that they're comfortable, if you walked into a room with other people who knew the names of the gods and knew stories about them and knew the names of a few of the giants and knew what was what, read The Children of Odin by Padraig Colum. It's written for like 10 to 12-year-olds, but it was written about 120 years ago, so not dumb 12-year-olds. And it basically is a retelling of the Edda in chronological order. Well, mythic time chronological order, but in the supposed order that things probably happened, to make it make sense as a story. And it's an easy read. It's a fun read. And when you're done with it, you're going to be able to understand what people who have read 30 books about the gods are talking about roughly. It's going to make you not feel stupid, which is a really good starting point. After that, I would recommend the Prose Edda, all of it. Read all those kennings. There's a lot of good information in there. Then the Poetic Edda. Don't start with the Poetic Edda. Icelandic skaldic poetry is hard, but if you read the other two books first, you're going to have a frame of reference and it'll be a lot less hard. And if you haven't read all those three things, then I would say don't even bother with anything else. Get that core stuff in first.
That's something that I've really noticed with this whole sphere, because it's not just like there's a Bible you read. There's anything from linguistics to literature to history to archaeology and so many things. And it's easy to get lost. The more you keep plugging through, the more pieces start to fit, connections start to be made, and you'll get it. So if you're reading a text that's a little bit difficult, hang in there, it'll pay off. Sunshine Sucks donated to us, and I appreciate that. Sunshine Sucks. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's our first donation we've got on Entropy, and like I said, much appreciated. We have a question that came in from the Lugnets a while ago. They actually sent it to me. It wound up in my spam folder, and I didn't get to it. So it may or may not be timely, but their question was why the AFA has chosen to celebrate Sigurblot in July. Some of you may be aware that historically, Sigurblot is often attested at happening in the springtime at the beginning of raiding season. I could try to come up with some amazing reason to blow your minds, but honestly, the reason was, as we filled in our calendar, we had this big hole in July to where we didn't have a reason to get together. And so I figured certainly one of our ancient ceremonies that was really important was Sigurblot, and getting together at least once a month with our people is very important. So I plugged Sigurblot into July, and as Sigurd Bloat in the past was often for success in a raid or in battle, I wanted to spin Sigurd Bloat in a modern context, asking for success in our various endeavors in the battles we face in the world, the battles we face to help grow Asatru, to achieve things as the AFA, and also our personal struggles. But I wanted to also be a time to celebrate the victories that we've achieved over the last year. And so we do that at Sigurd Bloat as well. Creating our calendar of events, some of it is based on attested events at the right times of the year for solstices and equinoxes and things of that nature. But a lot of it is taking a religious tradition from England and Scandinavia and the continent and trying to fill up a calendar with enough of those special days to where it's balanced and to where we honor the important things our ancestors honored, but that we honor the things in a modern way, in a modern context. So that's kind of the thought behind that. We got another Cliff question from Katla. Cliff messaged his question a few weeks ago about winter nights, but didn't get a reply. Is there parking at the site with or without hookups for RVs?
So there is parking at the site. I apologize if I didn't see your message. I'll go back through. Private email me and I'll get back to you that way. I'm not sure how you reached out initially, but there's plenty of parking. RVs are welcome. I don't believe there will be hookups for them though. So you'll need to be prepared to be self-contained, but you can bring an RV or a camper. I just can't promise you'll be able to empty it or plug it in.
So I appreciate everybody. We're getting a lot of great Cliff questions tonight. Before we go on to some more questions, and we do have some stacked up, this is a good chance. Cliff, can you tell us a little bit about Winter Nights? You've been involved in all of the Winter Nights. If you could tell us a little bit about how that's evolved and kind of what the difference is this year between the past years.
I sure can. So yeah, Winter Nights was one of my first Asatru Folk Assembly events. I'd been to a few things at people's houses, but Winter Nights in the Poconos in 2012 was when I first met you, Matt, and when I first met the McNallans and a lot of other people that I've become good friends with, and that's the one that really sold me on Asatru being a real religion, as opposed to a cool club. Winter Nights, I see it scrolling by at the bottom right now, but Winter Nights is going to be in Ohio this year. The camp that we had a long-standing relationship with in Pennsylvania is no longer doing group rentals to anybody. So that relationship ended on good terms. I'm a little bit sad about it. That's where I met my wife. I know, Matt, that's where you met your wife. So there's it's a bittersweet thing, but I'm glad that ended on good terms. We can go to the camp director for a good referral where we might need one, not for other reasons we've seen other camps do to us. Winter Nights is going to be October 14th, 16th there. As you can see, the tickets are on the website. We have an event schedule in progress right now. We have a lot of things that we're going to be doing. Just to tease a few things, we always have a DCR bloat led by Githia Katie, who is my wife. We will be having some kind of dance or kind of relaxing jam thing going on Friday night. We are going to have lots of activities for the kids. October is an awesome month to have little kids around, so you can count on there being candy. If you're bringing kids, bring a costume. There'll be either a Halloween party or a costume contest or something to that effect. And as with all of our big ticketed Asatru Folk Assembly events, all of your meals are included. Tenting is permitted at the venue we have. If you aren't going to be tenting or bringing a camper or something like that, there are hotels within about 15 and 20 minutes, and we've priced it accordingly. The ticket prices are significantly lower than they have been in previous years because we're not providing indoor lodging. You can tent, but it's not the same thing as having a cabin. Might be warmer than it was at the old camp, though.
It might be. Great. Yeah, I hope you guys all come out and join us if you can. Singles, you heard it here, folks. Winter Nights is the place to find yourself a mate. Work for me, work for Cliff. It could work for you. We have another question from Bruce. Is that a Boston Scally cap?
No, this is a cheap thrift store cap.
Shame on you, sir. So, Bruce, I enjoy the Boston Scallies. We got to get Cliff on board because they're amazing hats. Cody asks, first, Derek Tidwell threw us a $10 donation. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Like I say, thank you, much appreciated. And the caption on it says the AFA give hope for the future. Cody, Witan Cliff, can you explain the benefits you've seen in raising your kids within the AFA and Alsatru?
Yes and no. That's the only way that I know. I'm really blessed in that Katie and I talked about how we were going to raise our kids long before we were married or had kids. And, you know, we knew that we were going to be raising them in Asatru with a Germanic worldview, with our Asatru ethics. And so the only thing I can compare it to is to my own upbringing, which was still pretty good. I went to Catholic school, for those who don't know. So the religion thing, you know, that's why I needed my decade of atheism. But I can tell you the benefits that I see is that my son knows who the gods are. When somebody shows him Marvel Thor, he doesn't recognize that as Thor. We call him Greg. Because we needed a name, because he still plays with like Hulk and stuff like that. So, but it's really kind of cool that, you know, my 4-year-old whose favorite god is Thor and who will hail Thor loudly when he's in ritual, even at a large event. We might need to encourage him a little bit, but when he does, he's loud about it.
Yes, he is. That
he knows Thor as a god. He knows Thor as the Thunderer. He knows Thor as the one who smashes the Jotuns' heads to little pieces when they try to attack Midgard and do harm to people that he loves. In the Asatru Folk Assembly, there are other families doing the same thing, raising their children as natural-born Asatruer who aren't going to have any confusion about who they are or where they come from. You know, the story of Ask and Embla, of the ash and the elm trees that were driftwood. I think most of us who found Asatru as adults can relate to that story because we were that driftwood. We know what it was like in between when we had our crisis of Christian faith and when we felt comfortable worshiping something again, and when we knew that doing that was right. And our kids aren't going to have to worry about that. I do sometimes worry about them taking it for granted, but if that's the worst problem that comes up, then I think we've done pretty well. Also, this is a really good time to plug the Asatru Academy, because when my son and daughter are old enough, they will absolutely be enrolled in that. It is, for those who aren't familiar, a home school program for your AFA member children and for anyone that wants their children to be raised Asatru. And it's going to be issuing diplomas. It's, you know, there's the logo. I love that. It's a real school. It gives you somebody to work with and to have daily lesson plans to guide you through homeschooling. It's a scary prospect when Katie and I look into that the amount of things that are required in some states can be intimidating. And it's tempting to say, oh, you know what? We're not going to do that. It's a lot of work. We'll just ship them off to the commie farm. But we're not going to do that. And it's really nice to know that there will be other students enrolled that they can interact with and learn from and learn with, that there will be a collection of parents that are involved in it as well. And Gothi Rob is absolutely doing a fantastic job at putting that program together. And, I'm excited to be able to observe it and to help in any way I can as that first class kicks off in September. And I'm looking forward to it. I guess it'll be the third enrollment class that my son will be eligible for. And yeah, I mean, those are the benefits. And I guess I expect my children to find their mates in the AFA as well. The way something I wanted to touch on, I'll just go into a tangent here, is how it's good. It's generally speaking good to be normal. That's why we dress nice when we go to worship. That's why we do good things for our neighbors where our hofs are. And it's why all of us should do that where we live. You want to be a good member of your community. And something that Christianity provided for centuries for our folk and did a good job of. There's other issues about it that maybe are problematic, but something that Christianity was really good at, and that the Asatru Folk Assembly is good at and needs to be good at to really be serving our folk well, is providing that communal touchstone for our people. If our people have some place that they can go where they know that the people there are trustworthy and share the same values as them, and that by default you're comfortable with your kids being around, and that is where families are born, that's winning. That's victory.
So Cliff, you touched on something very important that I'm so proud of. We've heard this from a lot of our parents, and being a father myself, I feel this way. It's scary to have your kids unattended at any time in this world we live in. But something magical happens when you're at an AFA event. When you're one of our HOFs, all of a sudden you're in this high trust environment of people who share the same background, the same values. And a lot of that fear is alleviated. We have, a whole community looking out for our kids whenever there's an AFA gathering. And it's really a beautiful thing to see. So yeah, parents, please know that you're very welcome to bring your kids to our events. They're full of kids, and everybody there is looking out for our kids' best interest. Folk the Rude donated $25 to us. Thank you so much, Folk. We absolutely appreciate it. We're filling up with questions for you, Cliff. People like you. You're turning out to be a pretty good guest. So Brandy says, Witan Erickson, what do you feel your most spiritually powerful moment, event, or bloat has been since you joined the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Well, there have been a few that really stuck with me, but I'd say probably the most significant one was actually one that I did in private, but I did it at the direction of Patricia. And I'm glad we kind of are able to come back to this, because ancestor worship is really important in Asatru. And before I wrapped my head around the whole spirituality of it, and I, wasn't comfortable using the word worship or religion or church, which I understand is something that people need to go through. It's part of the process of of developing, and the term reprogramming is used a lot as far as what we were taught growing up, which is obviously a generalization. But I was having trouble, like I was going through the motions, right? I would go to a bloat and I would say the words and I would take the horn and drink from it. I was following the formula, I was going through the motions because that's where I started. I was going to do the deeds first and let the faith come afterwards. I'm a Catholic. That's how it works. And I was a Catholic. And so I'm going through, the rituals, and it was at first it was a very strange feeling. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. Is that feeling, the hand of a god on my shoulder, or is that just the incense? What's going on? And my friend and mentor Patricia told me, well, if it's feeling disconnected when you're trying to make a bloat to Odin or Thor or Frigga or Freya, try making a bloat to one of your ancestors that's passed away that you knew while they were alive. And so I did. I made a bloat to my grandpa Harvey, who had passed away only a few years earlier. And something Patricia told me as well is make sure that whatever you give them, that it's something they like. This isn't, you're not guessing here. You knew this person for real. So you know what they like, and it doesn't matter what it is because it's a personal gift from you to them. And I may be about to offend some people here, but my grandpa Harvey loved Hawaiian pizza. And I know that's a controversial topic, but so I took a good slice of Hawaiian pizza, no Domino's. I got it from a real Italian grease pit in the Philly area because we have good pizza around there. Another controversial topic. But, I made this offering to my grandpa, and I spoke to him the way that I would have when he was alive. And I left him the slice of Hawaiian pizza and a soda pop, and I called it soda pop. Don't call it soda pop on a daily basis, but he was from South Dakota and he called it that. So I left those for him, and that one felt real. That one I knew that by doing this gift exchange, you can have a real living relationship with spirits. And the gods are a kind of spirit, and they are our ancestors. My belief in it is that the gods are our most ancient ancestors, and I believe that they are literally alive right now, and that they are literally alive in our blood and in our DNA. There is a chain reaction that started with Bor and Buri and Odin that has never stopped to this day. We're all still moving and breathing because of the energy that happened then. And there's a real physical connection to our gods and goddesses through our ancestors. And it's a responsibility that I take seriously too, because once I came to this kind of realization that the gods are alive and that my ancestors are alive and that there's this unbroken chain of events that connects me to them directly, I realized that I'm part of that chain too. And that for my son and for his great grandson, that if I don't keep that gift exchange going, and that if I don't do right by them, that not that they can't fix it, but that they're at a disadvantage because of things that I did or did not do. And it's an awesome responsibility. It's also an awesome blessing because I'm the benefactor of all those good things that my ancestors did or said, and I inherit some of the repercussions of the bad things that they did. That's really foundational to the way that Asatru and Asatru approach the world. I referred to that Germanic worldview earlier, and that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. It's really personal, and I think a lot of people had their first real spiritual experience in Asatru as by connecting with an ancestor, especially one that they knew, they got to know while that person was living. Keeping that connection through the veil is so very strong when it's somebody that you actually got a chance to know during life. So Daniel asks, you mentioned meeting your wife in the AFA. Can you tell us how that happened and its impact as far as growing within the Asatru family or within an Asatru family, and how is it as a family being in a leader? So I'm going to assume that's for you, Cliff. So go ahead and break it down for us.
Sure. So I stalked her for a while. No, not seriously. Well, a little bit, but I was persistent. Katie's a shy person, and so I had to be assertive in courting her, to the point that I told her, "I am courting you," and she was kind enough to let me take her on a date, and we had a good time, and it was a long distance relationship, not as long as Matt and Mandy's was. Ours was a couple of hours rather than a couple of 12-hour flights. But when we would go on dates early on, it was 2 hours one way, so we would make a weekend of it. So there'd be these big gaps of time in between when we were together in person, and we would do Facebook because we hadn't been kicked off of that yet, and we would text and all of that stuff. And then when we got our quality time in, it was really, it was great. I mean, I don't know how else I can describe it. We had lots of time and long car rides to discuss what our beliefs were. So we discussed Asatru, we discussed politics, we discussed what our vision for ourselves and a family would be. We had like some serious dates. We talked about everything that we ever would want to do. But it was good because we agreed on 99% of it. And that was really important to, us deciding that we were going to, be mates for life and get married and have children and all the rest of it. I'm lucky that I was able to meet Katie in the Asatru Folk Assembly for a few reasons. One is just that Katie had joined the AFA not long before all of this, and I'm glad I was able to scoop her up before somebody else did, because they would have. Also, because my friends, including Patricia and Dan from my kindred, had encouraged me. Not only did I ask Katie out specifically, but to not settle and go fishing in the Wiccan pond, because that was advice that was out there back in the old days. That you're a Viking man, so go raid the English village, essentially. But it's bad advice. The English are just fine, but the Wiccans are misguided. Because the ethical foundations just aren't there. So if you're a single man or a single woman out there, and you're looking to find someone to start a family with, be patient and find them within the AFA. I know that you can't control all of that. You could have the plan to marry an AFA member, and then you're at the library one day and that lovey music plays like in the movies, and then history is written. But as far as like the things that you do proactively to try to find love, be the best person you can in person for everyone to see in the AFA and everywhere else you go. If you are a decent and respectable person, walking down Main Street or, walking wherever it is that you are, people will see that. And that's especially true in the AFA. And I can say that I know secondhand, but from more than one of our AFA ladies that they are well aware of who the men of worth are in the Asatru Folk Assembly. So if you make sure that you build your own bright fame and do good things for your folk, the ladies are going to hook you up with somebody. That's going to work itself out. There was a second part to that question, and I have forgotten it, but I think that's good.
Yeah, no, that was really good. And the point you make about building your reputation within the AFA, it's nice to, when you're trying to build your life with someone, it's great to have all that commonality, but also for people to judge you on the right kind of criteria. And I think the AFA provides that. Ruben donated $10 to us. Thank you so much, Ruben. And he had a question. In the hyperpolarized America of today, the AFA has done a tremendous job of avoiding confrontations, always staying calm and cool. Do you ever receive some kind of, I was wrong about you guys? Absolutely, we do, Ruben. One of the things that I'm really fortunate to see being in the AFA for as long as I've been, a whole lot of members that leave under misunderstandings or the world turns them around. Those folks come back. A surprising amount of those folks come back. Sometimes we have the opportunity. We certainly see in the communities, every community we have a HOF in, that folks, may make an initial judgment of us based on the sensational journalism. But we've had several instances of those people apologizing or, changing their opinion from, being one of the town gossips saying negative things about us to coming by and shaking our hand and touring a HOF and really appreciating what we do in the community. Specifically, there was a group, I talked to Brandy about this last week, but there was a group in and around Murdoch, the Murdoch Alliance Against Hate or something, that took to persecuting us early on because they believed the hype. And there was a reporter up there that was intentionally trying to stoke hate, ironically, against us. This member of that, the founding member of that Murdoch Alliance Against Hate, actually came to the HOF and apologized and said that they were wrong about us. So that does happen, not as often as we'd like, but hopefully in the years to come, that'll increase how much that happens. Got another, Bobby donated $20 to us. Thank you so much, Bobby. Matt wins the next visit to Thor's HOF because he just finished a batch of that apple pie. And he also says he's loving the weekly interviews. Well, I'm glad that you like them, Bobby. I hope everybody likes them. These are a lot of fun. I love doing them. And I really like that we get to shine a light on some of our folks making this happen besides just me. Next visit to Thor's HOF. You never know. There's always stuff that comes up for sure by Ostara, but I would suggest that you, if you can, get a ride and make it down to the Njordshof dedication coming up in a couple of weeks. It would be great to see you there if you could do it. Cliff, which translation of the Eddas do you recommend?
I'm old school. I like Bellows.
Easy enough. So we have a question. Does the Asatru Folk Assembly require reading memorization prior to allowing seekers or new folk to wear a hammer? No, we don't. And I know this is controversial depending on where you come from. I know there's certain traditions to where people would have to do certain things to earn their hammers. And I think that happened a lot of places, but I do know that's a very prominent custom for incarcerated folks. We in the AFA believe that Asatru is your birthright. We don't want scumbags and lowlifes who don't know anything and are ignorant of our faith wearing a hammer, but they have the right to that hammer. We would hope that they would rise to the challenge that presents to be worthy of it. But that's really between them and Thor, and we don't try to prevent them from doing that. As far as to even become a member, we don't require memorization, but we do require that folks read our Declaration of Purpose and our Statement of Ethics to make sure that we're on the same page. And again, we're all adults here, and we hope that folks, when they take this seriously, will do their reading and do their studying and try to really bring this into their life. Okay, so this brings us to a topic that I wanted to make sure we talked about, and it's a good segue. Thank you, the Salutrian. Any updates on Phrasehof? Cliff, tell us about Phrasehof.
Well, I'm very excited about Phrasehof. We're going to be there's no timeline. There's the logo. I love it. Nick, you're doing a good job. Phrasehof is going to be in Ohio, probably northern Ohio somewhere. We are currently fundraising for it, and we have a lot of members and leadership in a good position to be able to support that when we're able to start looking for properties. The first thing that has to happen, though, is we have to pay off Nordhoff, because we aren't going to bite off more than we can chew. Every Hof that we establish, we need to be able to maintain in perpetuity. So we are not going to rush faster than we can and have ourselves disgrace Njord or Balder or Thor or Odin by having to close one of those Hofs or having to, not make some necessary repair. So though that's something that's really important that we need to do at a responsible pace. I want it tomorrow if I can have it, but that's not going to be the case. I'm hoping for next year, but more realistically, it's probably going to be 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years. That said, what we need to make it happen we need an increase in the number of members or an increase in the contributions from our current members. That's most likely going to be a combination of the both of those things. But that's how we get to having the appropriate funds on a monthly recurring basis to support a fifth temple. And that is how we can do that in a way that we never lose any ground, because that would be disgraceful. But it's going to be somewhere in the northern Ohio area that is subject to minor change depending on what things look like at the time that we're actually ready to do it. Anyone who is out there property hunting for us, something to keep in mind is that we are looking for churches specifically. The cool old hotel may be really cool, but it's not particularly well suited to our purposes for legal reasons in most part. You find an old castle mansion that's cool, and that's not well suited to our purposes, both for legal and for practical reasons. Church structures or structures that were at some type of house of worship in the past, they have everything they need, in that they have a sanctuary as a place of worship. They have a community hall. They have an industrial or community-sized kitchen, and the proper permitting and licensure to go along with it. And some of those details I can't be more specific on, because it's really going to depend on the local municipality, county, and state as we get closer to that. But Githia, Katie, and I are ready and waiting to start that process as soon as Njordhof is secured forever.
So that some folks may not know, that's kind of, I talked about Cliff transversing the state there. That's part of their move, is to prepare for Phrasehof. We may or may not have new Gothar ordained in that area by the time Phrasehof happens. But as it is now, Cliff and his wife, Katie, both of which are ordained, they would be the leadership of that Hof. And it's going to be a really exciting thing. It's kind of a, we want it to be, like Cliff said, he'd like it to be here tonight if it could happen. And if we get anybody donating in the donate box for, north of 200,000, then we can maybe make that happen close to tonight. But barring that, we do have a little bit of work to do. So folks know we're about 33% paid off of Njordshof right now. So we still got to work on that. But it's amazing to, it came up earlier how the AFA has changed since, since Cliff and I have been involved, and specifically since I've been Alsherjargothi and Cliff's been on my Witan. When I became Alsherjargothi, we had just had Odenshof for about it was officially midsummer. So we've had Odenshof at that point for about 3/4 of a year, and we didn't know how we were going to pay it off. And man, we finally have a Hof after, at the time, 22 years of the Asatru Folk Assembly's existence. Finally, we had that one Hof, and it was this insurmountable goal. And now, just a few short years later, we're paying off Hof number 4, and we're planning very solidly for Hof number 5. And couldn't have done it without Cliff. Couldn't do it without you guys and all your generous donations and sticking with us on it. We really do appreciate that, and I hope you know that. Got a couple more questions to go over. As a parent myself, I am always searching for new and exciting ways to teach my children about Asatru and the ways of our forefathers. Do you have any recommendations or links or books for that purpose? Cliff, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, Delaire's Northern Myths is a fantastic bedtime story. I read that to my son and my daughter over and over and over. There's also a really cool book on trolls that they have if you want to read them something a little scarier. The book I mentioned previously, The Children of Odin, is a good one. There's actually a wealth of that stuff. I don't have it all off the top of my head. But if you email me at c.erickson@runestone.org, I can dig up the things that I do have. And I know that our leadership and folk builders know many, many other resources like that as well. As far as something that's, not lore or story based, I think it's really important that as early as possible, that you have your children participate in Belote. And then when ready, Sumble's a little harder to sit through, depending on the size of the group you've got there. But have them actually participate in the gift exchange. We do several things in my home that really make Asatru real for our kids. And one of them is when we moved into the new home, we scared away all the bad spirits by having them march around with pots and pans. And me and Katie had candles, and we went into each room and lit it up and scared all the monsters away, all the bad spirits away with pots and pans, to take the house as a place that was going to be our inn and guard. We do that at New Year's Eve as well. That's actually a common thing in Western tradition. The pots and pans is a lot about scaring away bad spirits and bad omens from the previous year. Actively participate in a real way on a daily and regular basis, making it something that they would complain about if you stopped doing it. We also have a dragon bell. It's like this dragon mounted bell that we have in the doorway to the kitchen, and we use that to represent our house white. And so when we are making an offering to the house white, we ring that bell so that he knows that we've got some goodies for him. And sometimes when more my son, because he's a little older, he's 4, when he's spooked out or scared about something, he will come to me and say, "Hey, Daddy, I want to give something to our white and ring the bell," which is really cool because he's choosing to participate in the gift cycle. Then that's the best thing I can recommend is it's real. Participate with them every day.
That's great, Cliff. I appreciate some of these stories that you're telling. As Aubrey gets a little bit older, I'd really like to incorporate some of these things. We've got a beauty question. Our law speaker noticed that, Cliff, you are looking so young. Do you exfoliate?
Nah, but I did take a shower today.
Well, that counts. We'll take it. I appreciate that, even though we are at a distance. Another question. It's guys, I appreciate your patience on these questions. It's really good thing when we have so much to talk about that our questions are backing up. I promise I'll clear all of the questions before I sign off tonight. Cliff and me, what kind of stuff from the Asatru community are you looking for? And what would you say to folks looking to be more active in the Asatru community? So I certainly understand the last half of your question. The first half of your question, I'm not certain on the best way to answer. First, I believe very strongly that the AFA is the Asatru community. We are the community of folks that are out there practicing Asatru as a community. So what I would recommend for folks wanting to be more active is first and foremost to join the Asatru Folk Assembly. In doing so, that'll get you connected with your local folk builder and or Gothi or Githia, and just getting out of your comfort zone and being willing to go to an event, even if it means traveling a bit. I know it's daunting, but I've never heard someone travel to an AFA event and then regret the travel time. That's where the magic happens. It happens when you do this as a community, when we get together as our AFA family and stand before our gods. That's where the magic happens in Asatru. So anybody wanting to get more involved, if you look at any of our websites, and they're linked in the description of this video, but each of our Hofs has a website, and on it has a calendar of events. And you'd be surprised. There's a pretty wide dispersion of where events are. And chances are, certainly if you're in the United States, you can make it to an event. Other selected international places, you can make it to an event as well. But in the United States, it's going to be rough if you're in Hawaii. Barring that, we can connect you with some folks. So yeah, reaching out and doing that. As far as what we're looking for, we've largely found that personally. And we're just looking to grow and expand that and to build a tighter connection with the gods. We see our faith so often in a cyclical way. And I think that that's a very two-dimensional way of looking at it. Yes, there's a cycle, but if it's done right, it's a spiral. And so we're increasing and we're growing and moving upward. The more we're in that gift cycle, the more we're doing the right things at the right time. What are your thoughts, Cliff?
Well, yeah, I was gonna hammer in the notion, the truth that the Asatru Folk Assembly is the Asatru community, heathenry, Odinism, any such term that sometimes people use for that. I firmly believe, and this is with some experience, because in that time before I joined the AFA, I was shopping around with groups that don't do things the way that we do, because I wanted to know what was what. And the Asatru Folk Assembly is the only religiously focused group that there is dedicated to our folk, our ancestors, and our gods. So joining the Asatru Folk Assembly is the biggest first step. Or if you're not sure, then contact your local folk builder and come check us out in person. They'll want to know a few things about you before they'll be comfortable having you around to bring you around our people, because their safety is important. But if they check out and, you know, maybe meet you one-on-one first at a coffee shop or something like that. You know, come and see what we do in person. If, you know, if you're like I was and you need to see it firsthand in order to believe it or to, you know, to trust it. Once you're sold, then the best thing that you can do is to participate. Come to every event that you possibly can. That's something that most of us just do once we're involved because we want it so much and we love it. Tell your friends and family. I referred earlier to being normal as a good thing. What we're doing isn't strange. It's the most natural thing we could possibly be doing. And being openly Asatru to your friends, to your family, to your employer, to any other social or political or whatever things that you're involved in, you know, your hunting club, your gun club, the crochet club, whatever, doesn't matter what it is, all those extracurricular and hobby type things, be Asatru every day, because that's what's going to give some person out there who has Asatru as a birthright and just doesn't know it, the opportunity to claim that birthright. Yeah, be Asatru is the best thing that you can do. And if you still haven't had enough after doing all that, then talk to your folk builder about becoming an apprentice. You know, if you want to make things happen and you want to build, you know, a stronger Asatru community where you are, you know, in your own town, in your own backyard, if there isn't one, then make it happen. There's nothing stopping you. We will back people up who want to form kindreds, who want to, you know, see if they are a good fit for being an apprentice and want to do the work. A lot of it is very rewarding. It is not always fun. Sometimes it's discouraging because, you know, you see our folk at their best and at their worst. And sometimes they let you down and sometimes they surprise you and exceed your expectations. But yeah, I mean, take on the challenge. We, you know, we'll give you work if you want it.
Absolutely. Another question. I've talked to a couple of people about it, but how should I be reacting to coincidences? Example, I talked to Thor for the first time today, and our store lost power 4 hours later. Massive retail store, too. So there's no one answer to that. Power probably just went out in your store. But you know what? I always hold out that maybe there's something more to it. Maybe you reached out and in a way, Thor reached back to you. The significance of coincidence, or what I like to refer to as synchronicities, is most profoundly important to you and how you perceive it. Wondering what I would think of it, or, you know, maybe as a priest that matters, but what, you know, the average person would think of it is beside the point. It may hold value and meaning to you, and you are living the context of it. I always want to hold out that, you know, that possibility that things are more than they appear. And I think that's very important. It's very easy for people to get carried away and, you know, think every raven they see is a messenger from Odin. But depends where you are. Are you in an area with a lot of ravens? Is the raven in your house? Like, the level of the coincidence matters a lot too. Something else I think that's very important is keeping track. And, you know, if lots of coincidences are happening at very auspicious times, then I think there's absolutely something to that. But I think you feel in your bones whether there's something significant to them or not. And another thing I would caution on those things, take them for what they are and savor the mystery of them, ponder them, think on them, but don't overstress trying to figure out the exact particulars. let them reveal themselves to you on their own terms and savor and appreciate that. Cliff, do you have anything to add on it?
Yeah, you don't really have to figure out if Thor did that or not. You noticed it, and you don't have to prove that to anyone else. If it causes you to have a deeper faith in the gods and it spurs you to positive action, then it's real. I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Thor or to anyone when I say this, but if I see Thor in a potato chip and it makes me a better person, then that's good.
Absolutely. Got a website question. Cliff, could the website show who is best to contact to meet local AFA using zip code or by a map to show all of the similar subgroup area?
In theory, it could. If you are on the main website, runestone.org, and you go to the Hoff section, though, I think they'll serve you better. The Hoffs list all of the local folk builders by state, and that is who you're going to want to touch base with. We don't have, I don't think, a zip code search on those or the main site, but if you go and you look at the list of folk builders, you'll see that in most states we have one or two folk builders anyway. So if you input your zip code, it's still going to just give you the folk builder for your state anyway. And if you're not sure, just email any of them. They'll get you in touch with who the best person is.
All right. Next question. And again, I'm going to let you take this one, Cliff, because Alistair asked me this quite a bit, and I think he just wants a different person's take on it. Speaking of meeting your wife at an event, he's always got to ask, what would you suggest for young single Alsatru/AFA members looking to meet someone and to start a family? And then his question kind of cut off. But yeah, to start a family, next few years. There we go.
Well, I think I kind of addressed this one already. I bet Alistair asked the question before we got talking about it, but be your best self in public. Literally. Don't, and another thing, don't go chasing. Don't have a checklist other than that they must be Asatru. If you pigeonhole yourself into, only someone who is 5'7" with green eyes and red hair, you're going to rule out all kinds of people that are wonderful potential mates. Young people do this a lot. They have a wish list, right? It's a bad idea. Be present in the moment. Don't be a tourist, basically. Don't stand around taking pictures and trying to remember everything. Be there in the moment, be your best person in the moment, and do what's right and do things to build the community around you. And it will happen in its own due time. Partly because, as I mentioned, our ladies are watching, and if you're someone that they wonder why you're not with someone, they know who all the single ladies are better than any of us fellas do.
So we got another question here, and I think I understand this one. What would you just say to someone who has only met with Christianity, like Jehovah's Witnesses or WWCG, Buddhism, Wicca, and Northern myths were as the Greek myths just that? And by the way, you're in a cult. So I want to take a stab at it, I suppose. First, I'm trying to think, because there's a number of angles on this. First, and I think Cliff would agree with me on this, you start with your ancestors. There's no debate. Your grandparents were real. They existed. most people who have any degree of spirituality, and even people who would claim to be atheists, often will speak to their ancestors in times of trouble. They'll go before, whatever they do in the privacy of their own home. Maybe we go before an ancestor's altar and they don't. Your ancestors are real. And I'd build it from there. Well, your grandparents are real. Certainly their parents were real. And if their parents were real, then your family was real all the way back to the beginning. And we believe that our gods are that beginning. So I think connecting organically through your ancestors is a really good way to start on those kind of things. I'd also point out that myth doesn't equal not true. I think that's taken on a colloquial meaning that does a disservice to the word. There's mythos to all faiths. If they were Jehovah's Witnesses or other sects of Christianity, Buddhist, Wicca, any of the things you mentioned, they all have myths. And I think that our myths should be treated like their myths, in the sense of, to their practitioners, those speak of profound truths. If the other faiths that they are familiar with can be based off of those mythos, then certainly ours can as well. And we take ours just as seriously. And I think I'd also go on to differentiate. There's a difference between taking it seriously and taking things literally, as some of the faiths you mentioned do. One of the other disservices to mythos is to try to force it in the box of historicity. Myths were never meant to be historically accurate glimpses of historical events. They were ways to tell profound truths in ways that we can best comprehend and understand. And but I think I would demand the same respect of your faith as the faith that they are comfortable with or that they have the past experience to. And it also goes to what Cliff was saying about be Asatru every day. The conversation is going to go a lot better if you're a successful, upright, right-acting person and you link your faith to that character that you are, to the character that you've built. That's a huge testimony to the fact that we do take our gods and our beliefs very, very seriously. Cliff, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, you're absolutely right about if you're able to link your being a good, righteous, happy, strong person to Asatru, it makes a big difference. My mom, she really didn't understand at all what I was doing. And like I mentioned, I kept it secret for a while. So my family had some reason, some valid reason to be suspicious at first that I was joining some crazy cult. And we're not technically a cult, by the way. Cults make you cut off your family. We're never going to ask anyone to do that. So there you go. If they want to know why we're not a cult, because I'm talking to you, Mom. My mom said to me, I don't know what's going on in your life exactly, but I know that in the past few years, you've been stronger and happier than I've ever known you to be. So something must be going well. And that, let me explain why Asatru is important. And, she doesn't get it at all. For a while, she called it ostrich, like the bird, which I don't know if she was trying to be funny or not, but it kind of pissed me off. But, it helped her to see. And then the fruits of that, it took a few years, but once, I met Katie and had a family and everything that's come from me being in the AFA, it's really given some confidence that, whether they think it's a real religion or not, they know that it's good for me, and that's good enough for me. I think it's, if you're trying to explain it to somebody who doesn't get polytheism, if you're talking to an Abrahamist and all they know about is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and that's all the religion they've ever heard of in their whole life, you can remind them that, every people on the face of the planet Earth through all of time has had a natural religion. The only one that was Abrahamic was the Israelite religion. Everyone else, and theirs is, I would say, a folk religion, and everyone else has a folk religion, an ethnic religion that their people had before they can remember time. It's just always been there. The, Shinto, Yoruba, the various Native American religions, every people that you can think of has something that they did natively before some Christians or Muslims came along and changed that in almost all cases. And if they can understand Native American religion, or if they understand Shinto, even, not deeply, just that it exists and it's a real religion, then you can kind of explain what you're doing. It's like, well, it's kind of like that, but different, of course, and with a European Germanic context to it. And like Matt said, the starting with your ancestors is really important. If, in 2 words, if you have to describe Asatru, ancestor worship is a good go-to. They may not understand why you're doing it, but they'll at least conceptually understand what it is.
I found that's really interesting. This kind of to the point and kind of an aside. I always love when I go into Asian restaurants or Asian businesses, because very often right at their front counter, they'll have an ancestors altar. They may have an altar to one of their native gods. They have an altar to their ancestors. A Thai restaurant down the road, the guy has an altar also to the king of Thailand. So what I've seen the most acceptance from to our stuff, and I've seen this when Asians have, there was an anecdote, a friend of mine he had his family altar right by his doorway. And when Asians came and delivered I think he was getting some Chinese food, they looked over at the altar and they saw, ancestor. And they absolutely understood what that was going forward. And I think people that are more connected with their indigenous faith would understand it easier. But I always thought that was kind of a cool story and a cool, point of understanding.
If I might add something before we move on, something not to do when you're talking, with a Christian in particular, especially if, a Christian that's your family member that you love and want to keep that relationship positive, don't go on a rant about how awful Christianity is, even if you know all the reasons why that might be and can list them. And, that's a great conversation to have with other people who are Asatru or who have moved away from, monotheism like that. But all it'll do is insult the person that you're talking to. You want to be respectful. And most of the time, people aren't ready to hear that something that they care about is, maybe not good for them or not as good as something else might be. For me, when I, left Christianity, that was a traumatic experience. It was a really big deal. It wasn't a triumph on my part. It was something that was devastating to me. So, don't crush them. You don't have to win the argument. It's not something that should be approached as an adversarial thing like that, I don't think.
Well, that's a really good point, Cliff, and I'm glad you brought that up. In the question, the question kind of presupposes that these people don't have a respect for your faith. It's fundamental if you're feeling that these people are disrespecting and not taking what you believe seriously, it does you a disservice to then treat their faith with disrespect or not taking it seriously. I think that's going to, only push them further from you rather than bring you to any point of understanding.
Yeah, your God was nailed to a hammer, or your God was nailed to a cross, and my God has a hammer. It doesn't win any arguments. It's a funny meme, but that's all.
So, Cliff, are applications still on the website for Odenshof? Do we have those on our Hof websites?
I think we do. Let me pull one of them up. I'm at a computer. How handy.
Excellent. So while Cliff is checking, the go-to where you can always apply is at www.runestone.org and click the join link. That always works.
Yeah, it's in a big white box right at the top.
All right, big white box right at the top on the Odenshoff website and the other Hoff's websites, though it's in a different color on those.
Should be.
It is. They're pretty well cloned. How do you folks handle maintaining meetup security or filtering out those with hidden bad intentions? I very much appreciate the wholesome community spirit that you're cultivating and want to visit. Well, that's something that we've, had to refine over the years. Something that's just true. There's an inverse balance between maximum safety and growth and being able to grow. So finding the right balance to where we make sure our families are safe, we make sure we maintain a good environment, but to where we can welcome in new people and be open. It's been an interesting challenge. So the AFA has a security team. First, I'll address our members and then I'll address events. So for membership, we have a security team. We ask a number of things on the application. Vital stuff like your birth date and your real name, and your address. And we do a background check before we, allow anybody to join, to search any kind of, sex offender registry, obviously, but also to search criminal records. And we have a section where you have to list if you've been convicted of a felony and what that was. That doesn't automatically mean we don't let you join, but depending upon the nature of the crime, it certainly means we have some questions and want to interview that person and come to an understanding of those circumstances. We also have a mental health field. And again, we don't want to push anybody away because they are suffering from mental health things. We want to make sure that's under control and that also doesn't present a danger. One thing that people may not be familiar with because it's very different than Christianity, but Asatru is a community religion, whereas some of the other faiths are an individual-based religion. Their big focus is on what's best for the individual often. In Asatru, we focus on what's good for our community. Yes, we want to help all the individuals, but not at the cost of our families, not at the cost of our community. So that goes into the membership. As far as vetting on events, for people to attend events, they're vouched for by an AFA member. The vast majority of folks at any of our events are members. And we had a more mixed, non-member crowd versus members when Cliff and I first got involved. But these days, it's almost all members with a couple of folks that are vouched for. And vouched for means that member keeps an eye on them. That member lets us know so that the rest of us there, while welcoming them and introducing them and getting to know things, we also keep an eye to make sure everybody's safe. But that's worked out very well for us. It's been a long time since we've had any kind of an incident. Only incidents we've had, we've had people that have drank too much in the past, and then our leaders have stepped right in to ask them to go on their way. So yeah, I would encourage you to come out. I'd encourage you to bring your family out. And I can guarantee you that the leadership that are there will absolutely keep an eye and do their very best to make sure you guys have a great time and are safe. Any thoughts on that, Cliff?
You covered it pretty well. It's a balancing act, right? We need to protect our members and their families. That's the number one priority. But the mission of the Asatru Folk Assembly is the promotion and the dissemination of the religion of Asatru. And you can't do that privately without meeting people for real. So, there's risk involved with meeting anyone new. People in theory could lie to us or whatever. But I don't think any more dangerous than going to the mall or going to, see the races or something like that.
I'd say much less so because we do have eyes that are there looking out. It's a group to where we know who's there that's not one of our regulars, and we are keeping that eye out always. That vigilance is always there for our folk. Son of Woden, thank you very much for your donation. I appreciate that. And Brandy, thank you for your donation. We're doing really good on the donations tonight, guys. 105 so far. That's amazing. Thank you. So these donations are going to go into our general fund and help pay off Njordshof and get us to where we can make Freeshof a reality. This all goes to that, and we are $105 closer than we were when we started this broadcast. Are there AFA events in Scandinavia or other parts of Europe? Yes. So we have members in a number of European countries. I believe we have members in Ireland, the United Kingdom, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, and Italy at this time. We have our folk builder who's in Europe, Eric Lognet, who is in Sweden. He's way far north in Sweden. He's up kind of close to the Finnish border. But yes, he hosts events. We have numerous active members in Sweden that host events. So if that's something, if you're in that general area, let us know. Let Eric know. His contact information is elugnet at runestone.org, and he can get you set up in that area if you want to meet some Scandinavian AFA members. Where can I find information about the Hoftoller? Cliff, you want to take this one?
Absolutely. I love the Hoftoller. So for those who don't know what Hoftoller is, it is percentage-based contribution to the Asatru Folk Assembly. And it comes from Scandinavian, Old Norse, for Hoftoll, literally a toll that you pay when you go to the Hof. Like a Hof tax, I guess you could say. And it is the best way to contribute to the Asatru Folk Assembly. Alsherjargothi Matt likes to say that's the Christians give 10%. That's why they can have nice things. They have gold in their temples. So, we ask for a minimum contribution of 1%. If you are interested in doing that, you want to contact your folk builder, your local folk builder, or your favorite Gothi or Githia. Ask anyone in leadership, and we can get you started on that. We will accept pretty much any method for contributing that, but some of the easiest ones are direct deposit. If your employer supports it and you get a regular paycheck that does direct deposit, many but not all employers are set up to let you allocate that direct deposit to more than one account based on percentages. That is a super easy way to do it. And you can go in, if your company uses ADP or something like that, and just adjust the percentages. When you get a raise, you can up it. If you have hard times, you can lower it. All we ask is that you keep it at 1 or better. If that's not something that you can do, you can just, estimate it, do it at tax time, and figure out what 1% of that would be, or whatever percentage you decide to go with, and then do that, as a recurring e-check or credit card or debit card payment, and your folk builder will guide you through the process for that. If you attend a Hof regularly, bring a stack of cash. We'll record it. The important thing about Hoftoller is that it does end up numerically being generally more than people who are on, the subscription-based memberships, which helps us achieve our goals. Obviously, our mission as a church is religious and spiritual, but to really implement all of that, we need funds and assets so that we can acquire Hofs, most importantly, so that we can, fund the events that we have in advance. We have to spend several $1,000s before anyone shows up, to do one of the events at one of the Hofs, the big ones, or, at some camp or something if we're in a region where there's not a Hof yet. And it helps provide for other services. The Asatru Academy, for example, we are not charging any of the families of those students. That is a free service for parents who have children that are in the AFA. We, use the funds to help make sure that our Gothar can get to our folk when they have a need for them to be there. If it's a funeral or a wedding or a baby naming, we're going to make sure that we make a Gothi or a Githia available to you, among many other things. Now's probably a good time for me to just mention, if nobody asked about it, our folk services program. It's one of the things that has been around in the Asatru Folk Assembly since I joined, and it's really, really important. For those who don't know what that is, if an AFA member has some struggle or hard time in their life, we have got your back. We have helped people who had, some kind of flooding and it damaged their computer, and they, worked from home and their computer was their livelihood. And, $500 means that they get a paycheck for the rest of the year. And if, we can do that kind of thing for someone if they have a need for that. We've had people who've had medical issues or who have had, a loss of employment or other struggles. And we take our ending guard seriously, which is why we need everyone who is not struggling to be chipping in so that we can achieve our goals, but also so that we can take care of our people when a need rises.
Well, there's something else I wanted to mention while we're talking about, the different funding things and different causes that we, use those funds on. Another thing that we have that you guys can feel free to donate to is, I'm sure great many of you guys are aware of the atrocities that have been going on pretty steadily in South Africa, targeted at our people, at people who share our same ethnicity. And they've been targeted largely because of their ethnicity. So we saw this. We don't know how to fix it. We don't know how to fix everything, but we know what we couldn't do was doing nothing. So what can we do? Well, every quarter we pool together those donations and we send them to an organization, it has traditionally been the South African Family Relief Project. And that gets, most often we donate towards their grocery list, towards their food. So that feeds a lot of poor and struggling South African white folks that have found themselves marginalized at this time and have trouble feeding their families. So we're really proud to be able to be part of trying to make that a little bit better. Can't make the whole situation better, but we can make some folks eat a little bit easier. And that's always a really special thing. So thank you for everybody who's contributed to that. Thank you for everybody that donates to the AFA in general. We appreciate you guys. Everybody who's paying by Hoftoller, thank you. We ask 1% for Hoftoller, but very often we have folks that give, much higher than that. So we appreciate it. The big theme is not paying membership dues to a club to where you are exchanging money for a service. That's not what we're doing. We're donating to our church, to our gods. This is an act of giving and of sharing with your faith community, not of paying for a service. And we really want to get that mindset in with folks. And the more we've done it, not just financially, but with the AFA culture, it's moved us in a really, really good direction. Is there a roundabout way we can know how much more is needed? I sent $10 to Phrasehoff as soon as it was mentioned, and would gladly send more. So the first leg of the Phrasehoff endeavor is to pay off Njordshof. I think the number for a payoff on Njordshof at present is somewhere around 155,000. As far as in order to start on Phrasehoff, our current level of donation needs to increase by about 24%. Now that includes growth in numbers. This year compared to last year, we're up 14% membership wise. So, however that works. But those are some of the numbers we're looking at. When we look at purchasing Phrasehoff, it's really tricky when you look at properties. We have purchased one of our Hoffs for $45,000 and another one for I believe $230,000. So that can be kind of all over the map, but those are the best I can do on numbers, and those are as close as I know them to be. Another question is, why does the AFA focus on built hofs? Why not start with sacred groves or circles? Would it not be cheaper to buy undeveloped land? Well, first, certainly it would be much cheaper to buy undeveloped land. Um, but we've had sacred circles and sacred groves for a very long time. Most of us, when we started out, set aside portions of our property for that purpose. The evolution to having hofs is the same reason that our ancestors built hofs, the same reason that other Aryan religions have always had temples when they're able to build something first, something serviceable where you can get in out of the weather and to where you have a special set aside space where people can gather and be, separate from the elements has always been something nice that our folk have tried to do when they have the availability. Also, getting something grand to showcase the glory of our gods is really, really important. A hof is very impressive. And, for the same reasons that an undeveloped plot of land is cheaper, it's also less impressive. And then another reason, quite simply, a house of worship is something. It looks like something, people recognize it as something, and Western mankind knows that that is where you go to worship whomever you worship. Having that for our gods, certainly they deserve it, and it puts our faith on a reasonable playing field with the other faiths that people are coming from and surround themselves with. So I think it's very worthy of our gods to try to hold them, to worship them at that standard and not in a primitive way. You have anything to add on that, Cliff?
I don't know if it's an addition, but the main reasons I think that we are targeting existing houses of worship, churches all so far, is accessibility and credibility. Asatru is a real religion, but as a lot of you know, not everyone who is not Asatru shares that opinion. So we focus on making Asatru a real religion, even to people who do not practice Asatru, so that they see Baldur's Hall and they know that that is a place of worship and they know why people go there. And accessibility is really important too. A lot of cheap undeveloped land is in some remote county that nobody can get to, and that doesn't really do most of our folk any good. We're trying to get as many people to be able to practice Asatru in a practical way. And, that means churches in towns a lot more than it means, a meadow on top of 100-acre mountain or something.
Absolutely. So, all right, I see the family first approach. Does the assembly have a moral, ethical view about homosexuality? Cliff said that Wiccans don't have the same morality, and sexual immorality has kept me from pagan roots. First, absolutely, we have a moral and an ethical stance against homosexuality for a variety of reasons. First, and in a very basic way, it does not further our folk. It does not make children. It is askew from the natural order of things. We worship the gods of order, and we stand against the forces of chaos. And homosexuality is very much a symptom or an aspect of chaos. In a very real way, we believe strongly that homosexuality is a form of mental illness. And unfortunately, it's been something that's been championed by certain elements in society today. So there's a lot of people who are very damaged that don't get treated and don't get help because they serve a use as a mascot for progressive causes. And I think that's tragic. Another thing is we want to keep our children safe. And we believe certainly that male homosexuality is a very clear threat to our children. I'm not suggesting that every male homosexual does anything wrong by children at all, but I think that the percentages speak for themselves, and it's when your mind is deviated in that way, in a sexual way, we think that's unsafe for our kids and our families. And I wouldn't want to expose any of our children to any predation or any of the consequences of that. Cliff, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, check out our statement of ethics and read the family principle. That is one of those things that we put some thought into making more clear for some of the reasons mentioned. The pagan umbrella, we are not part of that. By the technical definition of pagans, as in, European polytheists, yes, we are that. But that's about as much as we share in common with those groups that I think you're worried about. We want our children to grow up to be mothers and fathers.
Absolutely. How is a good way to discourage well-meaning Christians to refrain from praying for you, hoping to not offend them? I wouldn't encourage them not to pray for us. I think most, well, you specified well-meaning Christians. If they mean well and they're concerned about us and they want to pray for us, that's between them and their God. I think we do better to not dissuade them from that and appreciate the goodwill that they're putting out. I don't think that they're praying to their God about us is going to put any kind of bad hoodoo on us. So I don't fear that. And I think that it's just a nicer thing to, appreciate the thought and move on to the next thing. What are your thoughts, Cliff?
Very much the same. I don't discourage that. If somebody wants to give me some extra good spiritual points by having a God that I don't have a kinship relationship with, throwing some goodwill my way, I don't feel like I'm tainted by that. I know for sure that they're not going to be able to pray their God into seducing me, especially if it's Christian, because I'm well versed in that after 13 years of Catholic school. So, my traumatic break with Christianity was very permanent and personal. So, as a side note, I do believe that God is real. I believe that the gods of any ethnic religion are real. And the Christians, of course, aren't an ethnic religion, but they're worshiping somebody else's ethnic God. So, I don't think they're praying to nothing. I just don't think it's going to be harmful to me. I'm quite confident in my relationship with my ancestors and my gods. And another sort of side note, I had a kick for a few years where I would say Gesundheit all the time instead of bless you. And that just didn't sound very natural. So I'm back to bless you. There's nothing wrong with that. We can, we don't need to offend people. And if they want to send goodwill our way, then great.
This is another thing that I want to bring up, and it's not necessarily timely, but every year around Yule, we have concerns of, people will take offense if somebody wishes you a Merry Christmas. If people with different belief systems than me wish me a happy anything, I think that the response is thank you and appreciating it. I don't care if somebody wants to tell me Merry Christmas, I appreciate it. If you want to tell me Happy Hanukkah, it's a little bit odd, but sure, I appreciate it. If you want to tell me Happy Kwanzaa, again, kind of strange, but okay. I think any gesture of goodwill is nice, and I think it's noble of us to accept that as it's intended, as opposed to, be easily to take offense. Are there AFA members in Finland or Estonia? Not at present. I would love to see that change, though. If you find yourself there, you have family there that ought to join us, send them over. We would love to see that. I've got a question: how to make a donation? Right now, Nick is going to throw up a bunch of options on how to make donations. Any way you want is how to make a donation. We have a donate link to a number of specific AFA causes on our website, but we also have the general fund just donate button, and that's the easiest and most versatile way to donate to us. If you'd prefer to donate by check, we could provide you an address for that. If you want to donate by cash, we can get you in touch with the closest folk builder. Folks have already done it during this broadcast. If you want to donate money over on Entropy, that's a really nice way to donate to us as well. But thank you for asking, and thank you for, wanting to donate. It's much, much appreciated. Looks like last question here. We have done exactly 2 hours. I think this is the longest stream I've been a part of doing, and really appreciate our amazing guest, Cliff, for joining us. Daniel asks, where do you guys see the AFA in 10 years? Cliff, go ahead and take this one first.
Everywhere. No, really. I mean, we're talking about HOF 5, but, in private, Matt and I are talking about HOFs 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to keep pushing forward. I mean, I don't know exactly how far into the list we'll get in 10 years' time. I would hope that we're talking about maybe 9 by then. That's a long time. And if you think about, we've got 4 done in 6 years, is it? And at an accelerating rate. So that's possible. I would like to see us with Agothi or Githia in every one of the US states and several in Canada and Europe as well. We have members internationally, and we need to do a better job of serving them. We do the best we can, and they do a lot of hard work to make things happen, but we certainly want to grow our clergy, our Gothar and Githia, to make sure that we can make practicing Asatru more accessible to as many of our folk as possible. 10 years is a long time. Also, when we get there, I'm going to say how quick it went, but something that it may be a little bit more than 10 years from now, but something that I'm really looking forward to as an eventual milestone is when we have the first 2 AFA babies marrying each other in one of our HOFs. That's going to be a big deal for me personally. That will let me know that we have, I guess, passed on the torch at that point, that the AFA, the Asatru Folk Assembly, will truly be a multi-generational cultural institution for our folk, for Western people. And that, if I get hit by a meteor, and Matt gets hit by a meteor, and Brandy gets hit by a meteor, and, lots of bad things happen, that it's not going to stop, because we want to get to a level of depth where, all of us are kind of expendable in a way. And I don't mean that in the negative sense, but we need it to be that way. We need it to be so that if any one of us goes crazy and quits, that nothing changes, essentially, except that, there's some hurt feelings. But yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to, and we're just going to keep growing.
So we've got a lot of things we're working towards, a lot of things planned. Some stuff I'm not ready to talk about right just yet, but Melinda and Folk, we're on the same page. As far as a 10-year, if you gave me 12 years, I'd like to see the first graduate that's gone all the way through the Asatru Academy. I think that'll be a big day for us, but that's 2 years beyond the scope of your question. Realistically, in 10 years, I would like to see Phrasehof and Tiershof be a reality, and I would like to be well on the way, or also having Braggieshof. Like Cliff, I'd love to see a broader disbursement of the AFA. I think we're doing great, but I would like to see a folk builder up in Alaska, I'd like to see somebody in Hawaii. I'd like a folk builder in all of the United States. I'd like at least a couple of folk builders in Canada by then. And I'd like to really revitalize our folk in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and in Europe. I'd like a folk builder in, Australia and New Zealand and South Africa within 10 years. And I'd also like at least 3 more folk builders in Europe actively hosting things there. 10 years is not a whole lot of time, but I think we can do it within 10 years very reasonably. And that's certainly what we're shooting for. Within 10 years, we're going to have a minimum of 10 years worth of curriculum added to the Asatru Academy. But I think in 10 years, we can get the whole K through 12 done for Asatru Academy. So that's what I'm going to try to hold us to and try to push on. That's kind of what I see the next 10 years. Got a couple more questions popped up. If anybody has any last questions, go ahead and throw them in. It's been 2 hours and change, and we're probably gonna wrap it up here pretty quick, but I appreciate you so much for being here and all the great interaction tonight. I've been wondering for several days, what is our version of bless me for when we sneeze, or is there nothing for it? Hard to pull myself away from it being so ingrained. Cliff, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, just say bless me or excuse me or gesundheit. When I'm the one sneezing, I say excuse me. I don't know if that's proper etiquette or not, but that's what I do. And if somebody else sneezes, I say bless you. I guess, it depends on what you're going for. If you want to be in your face about it to people, you could say God's bless you and make it plural and, turn everything into a wedge if you want to. But again, I would just be normal. That's not the sort of stuff that I would worry about.
It's always strange when people want to, add some Alsatru spice to common phraseology, or they'll, feel the need to exclaim things like, by Thor's beard. And it just sounds kind of goofy if you're doing it unironically. What do you say to people who are just out of Christianity? What I would say to the folks that are fresh out of Christianity, search yourself now that Jesus is out of the picture and see if you still feel a strong spiritual need, a strong spiritual calling. I know that I did. And what worked really well for me was positing, and this goes for all people, not just white folks. What did your people have before Christianity? Cliff mentioned this earlier, but that's exactly what happened to me. When I left Christianity, I didn't leave for Asatru. I left because I fundamentally didn't agree with Christianity or their God. And so I was searching, what did my people have before Christianity? And that's what brought me to Asatru. The other thing I'd say, if you're trying to pursue something new spiritually, to open yourself up and to make that effort. Studying all day long is never religion. It only becomes religion when it's practiced. By that same token, you can practice your religion on day one without feeling like you know everything or like you've done all of the study. I think making simple offerings and opening yourself up to the gods, that's the first step. And it can be a really powerful experience. Or like Cliff said, opening yourself up to your ancestors and asking them to help guide you to the right spiritual path where you belong. But I would encourage those things. Cliff, do you have any advice?
Yeah, definitely pray to your ancestors. Everybody's got them, even if you don't know their names. If you knew them in life and they've passed on, that can make it easier. But, if you're adopted or, prefer not to pray to ancestors that you knew in life for whatever reason, you've got ancestors whose names you don't know. Most people, it's just a few generations back. That's the foundation of religion for all peoples. I'm pretty sure about. And we know right and wrong. Right and wrong are real, and we know them when we see them. We know we know them when we do them. You all have had this feeling when you do something that you know is wrong, you immediately feel that internal guilt. You just know it, like a little kid, you know. They're more honest about it than we grown-ups are most of the time. That's really important for someone leaving Christianity, because they may be having a crisis of relativism, where they're gonna go down the path of, there is no good or evil, and therefore I can do whatever I want. And that's not really true. Maybe you can do whatever you want, but that doesn't mean it's without consequences, and that doesn't mean that it's not good or evil. And just reassuring them that they're allowed to take their time. They don't have to make their mind up right away. As I explained a few times, for me, it was a really traumatic experience. And I think that that's something that needs to be assumed. If someone's been raised Christian, and if they were a devout Christian, not being Christian is probably a bigger deal than getting a divorce. It's, for a lot of people, their whole identity, their family identity, their community identity. They may have considered being a priest or a minister and fallen away from that over time. They may have, been an altar boy, or there's a good chance if they're even bothering to talk to you about it, that they were all in, because casual Christians don't tell you when they're not anymore. They're just still doing all their secular stuff. So let them take their time, talk about right and wrong and where they see that in the world, and the truth they see in the world, and how they can their ancestors have a vested interest in them, no matter who they are. You can trust them no matter what.
So guys, let's call a stop to questions at this point. We've got 3 more that we'll go ahead and answer here. And then, it's Cliff's over on the East Coast, so it's very late for him. We're going to let him go. I'm going to go and see about tucking my daughter in. But I really appreciate this. Has been great tonight. Also, I just caught over. I can't catch all of the side chat. It's just too much while this is going on, and that's a good problem to have. But I did see that the person who asked the question about leaving Christianity only left just recently, and you may not be aware of this. But what I found really, really encouraging when I first discovered Asatru, and I was still at that place where it was very traumatic for me breaking with Christianity, I was very encouraged by the story of King Radbod of Frisia. So I would encourage you to look that up and look up his story and why we celebrate him, and hopefully that gives you some encouragement. That being said, what is the totem for Tyr? I'm not sure if I understand the question. If it is like, what's the mascot when we do Tyr's Hoff, that has not been fully decided yet, but we do have some ideas on it. But we haven't fully gotten on the other side of that at this point. I'm not sure of a historical totemic animal for Tyr. Cliff, are you aware of one?
I'm not. I can brainstorm some fun ideas, but that's probably not appropriate here.
Copy that. We will see when Tyr's Hoff comes about. I will divulge what I was thinking about was the eagle. I think the eagle, as far as Aryan sky gods, is a appropriate animal for a lot of reasons. So I think that's where I'm leaning, but we'll see when that comes about in its due time.
Well, that's where I was leaning too. It just does make sense, but I don't know of anything in the lore that connects here with eagles specifically.
There's something in the folk soul though. Cliff and I were both on the same page. I think that's where it may end up going. Do we have any solid book recommendations on runes that are not by Edred? I've got one that I always recommend. It's a kind of an entry-level one. It's for people who are new to the runes or for younger people, but I think it's very solid. I love it, and I plug it every chance I get. It's The Runes Workbook by Leon Wild. I really like it. I think it's very accessible, and I think it's a really good thing for people that aren't very familiar to get that foundation in the runes. What about you, Cliff?
Not books specifically, no. I would recommend working with the runes. You can do this online mostly. Learn about their phonetics, learn how to write and read with them in English. You don't have to translate into Old Norse to do this, but if you just transliterate some stuff in English in runic, and start doing some basic rune pulls and meditating on the rune's shape, the rune's sound, its alleged esoteric meaning, which does have some foundation, which is where some of the books would come in. But gosh, this could be a long topic, and we've talked about this before, Matt, but how the runes themselves are almost entities in and of themselves, and that you can develop a relationship with the runes, almost as a spirit of their own. Becoming familiar with them on your own, and then, seeing what you want to do with it from there. But at a minimum, be able to read them, because there's some cool stuff written on horns and in our hofs and stuff.
All right. Well, since you guys have made this be a 2-hour podcast or a 2-hour live stream, you can probably tell the lighting in Reno has changed and the sun's going down. So we've been trying to work on my light and get a little bit better. But no, this is really nice. I've really enjoyed it. We got one last question, a little bit more mundane, but still a good question. We used to have a genealogy page on Facebook. Are we still doing that on another platform? Take it away, Cliff.
There is a genealogy page on MeWe. It is not as active as the Facebook one, but it does have people sharing details about their ancestors, sharing things about DNA tests that they've taken. They have, tips and tricks and resources about how to do genealogical research. If you are not on MeWe, get on MeWe and search for me or Matt or any of our leadership, and we can get you added there.
All right. Well, Cliff, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm really glad that we're, all our audience here is getting a chance to talk to you as well.
Yeah, me too. This was really great. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions. I'd love to do it again sometime. I mean, Matt and I have talked for twice this long sometimes. These conversations can kind of just bounce around, so I'm happy to do it.
All right. Well, we'll definitely have you back on the program. Everybody who's participated tonight, everybody who's donated, everybody who's asked good questions, and all the people who've kept a really lively side chat going on. Thank you guys so much. I'm looking forward. I'm excited for next week. Next week, we're going to have Witan Svan Harrell on to talk about what he's been up to. And I think that'll also be a good show. If you're just catching this late and you want to listen to it at the gym or on the road or something, this is also being released as a podcast on Spotify. I believe it will drop on Friday. So thank you guys so much for all the support. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps. Thank you.